we spoke to William K. Black, and he called this a crimogenic environment in which the regulators and the politicians create an environment in which crime will happen. So let's look at this headline here, following on the first headline, where we know quantitative easing causes wealth and income gaps. Sterling, no refuge, as King eyes stimulus. Bank of England Governor Mervyn King signaled on August 10th that he may resume pumping cash into the economy in order to boost growth.
He has no choice, because the debt monster, both visible and on the shadow banking system, as Gordon Brown himself called it, is this huge out-of-control monster that requires 0% interest rates. There is no risk of rates going higher. That won't happen in anyone's near future. Interest rates will be kept at zero indefinitely, and this is another way to disenfranchise the poor who are rioting, as an example of trickle-down larceny.
The other thing I might add is that you could have predicted this in the price of gold, because of course the price signal from gold has told us that this crimogenic atmosphere environment of the UK would not stop, as the price of gold has soared over 1,100 pounds an ounce. That was only 6 or 7 years ago, 200 pounds.
Well, you mentioned something, that price signal. In an environment where prices are manipulated, the bond prices are totally manipulated. The governments are buying their own bonds, so you can't look to them for accurate price discovery. Stock markets are bought 70% bought and sold by computers. There's no price discovery there either. So the only place you have a real price discovery is in gold and silver. And gold and silver for 8, 9, 10 years has been saying that it's not a commodity, it's a currency, and it's going to go higher as the crimogenic wave increases and gets bigger and bigger.
Speaking of price signals, the most important price signal in our economy is, of course, oil. Saudi need for oil at $85 may speed cutback.
Well, one thing about gold as a currency is that you're not spending it if you're just sticking it away somewhere. If you're getting some gold and putting it in a vault, or burying it in the backyard, you're not spending it. It's money taken out of circulation, so it's hurting the economy. And that's a point we need to remember, is in order to make the economy move, you have to spend money. You have to circulate it in society. And we should look at things like, well, when you go to Walmart, are you circulating it well? No, it dies almost immediately. It goes to the wealthy who own stock in Walmart, and it sits somewhere, maybe on Wall Street. So the failure of our system is what needs to be addressed. And you want to get money moving in your local community rather than sending it off to Arkansas, where Walmart is based, or off to Saudi Arabia, where the oil is. Let's listen to them again. They've got a weird attitude on oil, I think. They're letting it go. They're allowing this idea of peak oil to have validity, and it really doesn't.
So this is a cutback in Saudi oil production being predicted. If the price of oil, which is now at about 85, if it goes below that, that's Saudi break-even point due to the financial disaster happening in the West, of course. The Saudi royal family has had to spend over $100 billion placating their population to keep it from looking like London.
So the same machinations in the markets we see at work, keeping interest rates at zero, that is the kowtowing to the banking terrorists and their need to foster larceny at the top end of society, is at work in the Middle East, in that we now have a floor on oil at $85 a barrel, because this is the price needed to placate their rioting population. For them, they are just buying off their rioting population with cash as a result of selling oil. Of course, the UK is running out of oil due to peak oil, so it's implementing other solutions which are going to be dead on arrival.
You can also see how we are at the peak system that we have at the moment, because we have a petrodollar, basically, a dollar backed by oil. But they're in a death grip. Saudi Arabia can't do with less than $85 because of the disaster of the U.S.-based debt system, which has clearly not been fixed. So, but because of that, the U.S. can't ever grow out of those debts, the Western world, because oil cannot go below $85.
Right, and you also will never have the demand for credit to keep that credit Ponzi scheme going like it has been, because of the failure to find new significant oil discoveries that would require a massive draw on credit. So this is peak credit working along with peak oil and peak everything else, peak globalization, peak financialization. So things are falling apart. And
Well, he's not addressing the fact that we really don't need to be consuming as much as we are. We're wasting huge amounts of oil. We're wasting huge amounts of just about everything. And we should be working for a society where we consume less and share more. And if we did that, the economy would fail even faster, because it's not structured on that. It's structured on more consumption and less sharing. Exactly the reverse of what is needed.
they're falling apart in different countries in different ways.
Now, speaking of resources, I want to go to this headline for an interesting quote in this story. Is Jeremy Grantham the world's most powerful environmentalist? So Jeremy Grantham is the head of asset management for GMO, and he's talking about global warming, and he says global warming is bad news, finite resources is investment advice, therefore that you should pitch the global warming story as an investment story. But the interesting thing is, I think he's really wrong here when he says this. Americans are just about the worst at dealing with long-term problems, down there with Uzbekistan. But they respond to a market signal better than almost anyone. They roll the dice bigger and quicker than most.
I think he's referring to things like the threat during the 60s of Sputnik, which got a response right away to put a man on the moon. And America won the space race. And so he's saying that if you could position this as in such a frame as this, that it were to require this type of gung-ho attitude, and it's an investment device, or there's an urgency behind it, that people would get behind it. But you see, the problem here, as I see it, is that that would require leadership.
I think it's kind of the opposite, Max. I see it as a population who is dumbed down through everything being taken care of them. So they see the price signal. The price signal on oil has been there for the last 5 years. We've seen it at $100 consistently, over $100. They've done nothing. Fuel efficiency standards have not increased. They are not responding to prices. They are just sitting there dumb thinking that, well, our government will go invade Libya and we'll be taken care of. Our government invaded Iraq. Won't they take care of us always on this issue?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's right. We do think in terms of letting somebody else deal with the problem. We could deal with it ourselves, and we could, convert our vehicle so that it runs on alternative fuel, or share more, basically, and reduce our consumption. Energy conservation is a good way of dealing with the situation. But we don't do it, the government doesn't do it, the oil companies don't do it, nobody's really doing it.
Yeah, the price of gas, which is independent really of the price of oil per se, is the price signal that tells Americans that everything is okay.
Now, we don't know what prices are real. Standards have not increased. They are not responding to prices. They are just sitting there dumb thinking that, well, our government will go invade Libya and we'll be taken care of. Our government invaded Iraq. Won't they take care of us always on this issue?
Yeah, the price of gas, which is independent really of the price of oil per se, is the price signal that tells